Touch us today. Father, we magnify you for all these things. Touch and bless those that are listening today. Father, thank you, God. Yes, you would touch, you would bless. Bless us from this day. Precious. Sister Michelle to go ahead and get us a congregational. It's Rejoice for the Steps is the name, and she's going to help. She's going to have to lead it. I've heard it, but it's been a while since I've sung it, so we'll all just join in together. And I think, don't I have it up there? You go.
Sing loud.
For the steps of a righteous man, they are ordered of God, are ordered of God. Rejoice for the steps of a righteous man, they are ordered of God. In the time of trouble, God will uphold him, God will preserve him, God will sustain him. In the time of trouble, God lift him up, so rejoice, who's ordered of God. Rejoice for the steps of a righteous man, they are ordered of God, ordered of God. Rejoice for the steps of a righteous man, they are ordered of God. In the time of trouble, God will hold him, God will preserve him, God will sustain him. In the time of trouble, God will lift him up, so rejoice, your steps are ordered of God. Of a righteous man, they are ordered of God, they are ordered of God. Rejoice for the steps of a righteous man, they are ordered of God. In the time of trouble, God will uphold him, God will preserve him, God will sustain him. In the time of trouble, God will lift him up, so rejoice, your steps are ordered of God. Do want to remind everybody, this is the month for Pastor Appreciation. So we took the offering last week, but if you wasn't able to give or didn't know about it, just mark it on your offering as you give it in there. This is also the World Mission Month. We have it twice a month. We take in October and March, and all the monies that we gather for this particular time was for go straight to the World Mission in the headquarters up there. And we'll take it November 7th, okay? It's after October, but that way. But you can give it any time if you want to just mark it in there for World Missions. We'll make sure that it gets to there. And we didn't really have a goal this year. I think last year I think our goal was like $700, and we was over 1,000. Maybe that was March, I believe. So we just, whatever we can give will be good for the church and be good for our missionaries. And also November 7th, the time changes. So if you want to be here an hour early, don't worry about it. And Darla and I will probably be here, but nobody else may be here till an hour later. So remember that as it comes up. Well, today the lesson may be very quick. Like I said, I've told many people who's going to be preaching today. I said, well, I'm going to try to teach. I'm not really a minister as far as preaching, but I'm going to try to teach what's going on, what the Lord has laid on my heart. And in this particular a month or so ago, whenever I was studying for it, this came up, but I didn't really feel like when I was speaking on the names of the Lord, but I didn't feel at the time that it was really, I should get into it. But today the Lord kind of impressed me, go ahead and go with this. And it's called the Day of the Lord. And this is talking about the end times. There's a lot of scriptures in both the Old Testament and the New Testament that deal with the end time events, what's going on, what's going to take place. And the Day of the Lord is one phrase that we see in the Bible, and we'll get into it a little bit more as we speak. But Brother Philip Barnett actually has a whole series on this. Okay, so in no way in this few minutes that we're going to be talking this morning am I going to be able to cover anything in comparison to what he's done. And then in addition to that, he's also got, at the church he's at now, they've done a bunch of additional tapings, and they're out on, I think, Facebook. So if you haven't seen those, it's some of the additional things. He's also done some work with Mike Harris for over at his church, and kind of a talk. Him and Mike was together, and they were talking back and forth some of these questions that's coming up. So if you're interested in this subject, I'd suggest, he's far more, knows more about it. Get with him, or, look on Facebook and you can find it. If not, we can point you in the direction. But the day of the Lord is both a period of time and a day of time. Okay? In the Bible, and we've studied this a lot on Wednesday nights, that when a phrase is used or when a term is used, it's done in such a manner that it refers to something that's happened or going to happen or both. And many times that's what the phrase means. We were talking in our Sunday school lesson here before that as you go through the Bible, you can see history repeats itself. Many times, over and over again, some things are given and it's the same things. And it seems like we as a people don't learn. We talked when the when the Israelites was leaving Egypt, they were there for 400 years. They had already forgotten, we only 400 years, but to us 400 years, our nation was nothing. Back in 1600, it's just the first people landing on Plymouth, things like that. But we still know that. We still know the history, what was going on. And they knew their history, the Israelites did, but they'd forgot a lot already. Even in their traveling in the wilderness, when they went out and started, they forgot what God had done them just a few weeks, months prior to that. The first scripture, and I'll be trying to do it on Facebook too, so pardon me if I'm not looking at that. In 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 and 2, Paul's telling us, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night." And this is where we're getting the title from. So, Paul's telling the Thessalonians, in the first part, I don't have to tell you about the times and the seasons, because everybody knows about times and seasons. We know the daylight, we know the dark, we know spring, summer, and winter is what we consider a season. There can be a season that's outside of that. It's a time period that we have outside of that where we can say, okay, this has been our warm season or rainy season or whatever it is, and it's not really set, but it happens, and we know that, when the Tulsa State Fair comes, it's going to be rainy. It usually rains. It's usually the break of the summer season, and it starts. So Paul is telling them, I don't have to tell you about these times and seasons. back in the Old Testament, it does go through it, and Jesus telling us, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes, about these seasons, what's going to happen, and when we need to expect these things that's going to take place. So this starts out the time period. The day of the Lord is actually will wind up. It's a dual meaning here. The last day when Christ comes back and sets his foot on earth again, and that'll be for the quote second time, then that's called the day of the Lord. That's when everybody's eyes going to see him, everybody's going to behold him. The time after, actually the time of the day of the Lord also starts, I guess, a millisecond after the rapture happens. So from then to that end time, all that period is considered the day of the Lord. It consummates in the final day of the Lord, which is when everybody's going to see Jesus as he goes forward. Matthew 24, Jesus tells us, he's talking about the temple. The disciples, whoops. It's on there, but it's not showing. Okay, you just have to look at it up here. The first part of it, they're telling, the disciples are saying, look at this magnificent temple has been built. Now, at the time, Herod, this has been rebuilt. The temple had been rebuilt for the second time. Remember a few months ago when we were studying in the Minor Prophets, the people from Babylon came and took over, or took all the people out of Jerusalem and Israel and took them over to their country. And Daniel tells us that they would be there 70 years, but Daniel also prophesied they would come back. Zephaniah, we see that. They came back. The king of Cyrus, I believe it was, allowed the people, after 70 years over in Babylon and then Medes and Persians, allowed them to come back too and start rebuilding the temple. So that's the second time. They did get it built, but it took them a while. We studied, it took them a little while to get it built. God had to prompt them, the prophets had to prompt them several times to get moving on it, and they did. And then it was torn down Herod got it when he came into being, came to power. He expanded the temple, made it a lot bigger, made it a lot more beautiful. The Romans at the time, the soldiers said it was one of the most beautiful edifices that they had seen, even before when Solomon, I mean, of course, there's 500-600 years or more, 1,000 years before that Solomon had built the first temple. It had been rebuilt and supposedly very beautiful. This was the second time it had been rebuilt. Then later on, they were looking at it then, okay, saying this is such a beautiful building. And Jesus looked around and he said, this is going to be torn down. This is all going to be suffer loss again. And it was. In 70 AD, after Christ, the Romans came back through. The Jews had an uprising, and they got wiped out. As far as the temple was destroyed, to get the gold off the walls and the gold off they had, they tore and broke down the walls to get all the gold that was there. When the heat would melt it, when they burned it, it would melt, so they'd break everything up. Today, they have a hard time even finding some of the foundations of where the old temple, the old part of the temple was, because it was so thoroughly destroyed. And that's what Jesus was telling them, prophesying. Yes, this is all beautiful, but it's not going to last. That struck a note with the disciples, and they said, okay, when is this going to happen? What's going to take place? Again, this is going to be a dual reference to then and now. It was telling them it's going to take place, but it's also going to take place in the future again. Verse 4, we'll start at verse 4 in Matthew 24. It says, Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Ye shall hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Okay, right there, that's telling us we're going to hear some things. We're going to see things. We're going to see wars escalating. We're going to hear wars, rumors of wars, all these things coming up. But the end is not yet. It's not going to come. It happened in 70 AD. They had wars there. It's happened since. We've had World War I, World War II, all the different wars that's happened all across the world. But that's going to happen because we're in this world. Until Christ comes back to set us straight or become the ruler of the world, there's going to be wars and rumors of war. So it's coming up, it's coming time, but that's saying this is a sign. Now if you go out here on the road and run down and you see this little octagon red square up here, that's a sign, isn't it? What does it tell us to do? Stop. Most of the time we do. Hopefully all the time we do. But sometimes we don't. But that's a sign for us. We know it's coming. We can see it afar off. We've recognized it. And we know once we pull up there to stop. Darla can tell you that I'm a stickler on trying to stop behind the line. They usually put a line there too. Because at our corner, if you're out too far, the other trucks or cars have a hard time getting around you. So you need to back off a little bit. Because this corner going our way, it goes down. And if I go down, and I do ever occasionally, the bottom will fall out. Because it's so sharp, the corner is there. But these are signs that's set up, and Jesus had told us we're going to see these signs coming up. Verse 7 says, For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Right now we're seeing a lot of this. Nations are starting to rise up against nation. China's talking about attacking Taiwan. I mean, they want to take it over again. And to do that, they're probably going to have a war over it. Soviet Union had been fighting with Kiev and Ukraine back and forth. They took some of their area a few years ago, Crimea, the southern portion of the Ukraine. All over the world, people are fighting over land, fighting over whatever it is. They're just fighting. So we're hearing these wars. We're starting to hear the pestilences, this disease that's out here now, COVID-19 is a pestilence. It's something that's there. There's been others, H1N1, the flu, all these different things that are coming up. These are pestilences that we're having to deal with. It's just showing us we're in that time slot. Now we can't put a clock on it and say it's 11 o'clock, and midnight is when Christ comes, but we're in that time frame somewhere there. We're in that time period. That's why Jesus said we can see the season and the time, or we know what's going on, so we need to be ready. Verse 9 says, Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Now he's talking to the apostles, okay, the disciples that he has here, and all of these are showing that it's going to happen to them. It did. There's only one disciple that from Fox Books of Martyrs that I understand, John, that died a natural death. All the others were somehow tortured, somehow destroyed by the Romans or the people of the time. They went through a lot of torture, basically. So he's telling you it's going to happen. At that particular time, once he died, the Romans were looking for his disciples because they wanted to get, and they had to kind of sneak around for a little while to get out, to move around. They had to basically fear for their lives a little bit until the Holy Ghost came down and fell on them in Acts and gave them that power that no matter what they do,
God's going to be with them, whether they live or die. Paul says that. Whether I live or die, I will be with the Lord. Verse 10 says, and then shall many be offended, shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Does that ring a bell? That's kind of like the news channel every day. You hear something else, it's like, why in the world would, such and such happen? And it's people just are not tolerant. I hate to use the word tolerant, but they want you to believe just like they do. And, that's not the way it is. Christ said we have to believe in Him. We have to believe what He is putting forward to us. But people, if we don't, it offends them. The word Christmas offends people. That's hard for me to believe, just because it has Christ's name in it. But it does. And they have, torn down the 10 Commandments in many places and replaced them. They don't want holiday. It's a holiday parade now, not a Christmas parade. All these different things because of who we follow. Because we follow Christ. Many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. There are many today prospering out there on the television, on wherever you want, internet, all these different things. They're teaching things. And what we need to do is see how that comes up against the Word. If it's going against the Word, we shouldn't be listening to it. We shouldn't believe it, first of all. Now, you can listen to it in order to learn, to catch what's going on. They say many times that the way the Secret Service, I guess, is the one in charge of the dollar bills. The way they learn how a fake is, a counterfeit, is they know the original bill so well that when they see a fake, they know it's immediately. It just jumps out to them. Now today, with the computers and all the printers that they have, sure, it's going to be harder and harder to catch, but they put more things in it. But we have to know the Word and know what's going up to know if a prophet or a person telling us, a teacher or a preacher, is telling us what the Word should tell us. If it's against what's in the Word, the Bible, then we don't need to be listening to it. They're false prophets.
Amen.
Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. We sing that today, that people want to do what they want to do. They want to feel good, and they don't want anybody else telling them what, is wrong or right. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. It's something. It's not going to be easy. A lot of people have an issue with, quote, the rapture happening at a certain time, happening what we call the pre-trib, before the tribulation starts, because they think that's an escape, that we're escaping God's wrath. We're seeing God's wrath right now on us, I think. Some of the things that's happening in the nation, as our nation has gotten away from God, things have progressively gotten worse and worse. That's my opinion. Again, go to the Word. I think that's sound advice, but you have to go to the Word to see to yourself. But it says we got to endure till the end. Now there's an end for the Christian, and then the final end for everybody else. That's kind of the day of the Lord spread that we talked about. Verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. And that's what a lot of people are talking about now. Has the gospel gone out to all the nations? Is that the last prophecy that's going to happen? We don't know. We don't even know if we know all the people groups that's around the world. They're finding people all over. We're trying to spread the gospel, but that's just telling them that's that area. That's the time. Once that happens, then we're going to be getting very close to the end of time. Now, each day it progressed. You go back to the 1500s when the Bible was translated into the common language for a lot of them, the English language, 1600s. That opened it up for a lot of people. Now we have it on the internet. The internet, you can find just about, you type in Bible, you can find any number of apps that have the Bible down. You can see it just about anywhere, but there's a lot of people, and I could say, you know, for us, English seems like it's one language. You go from north to south, east to west, United States. Yeah, we have different dialects, and some people from some areas speak differently and have different twangs, but it's still English. They have their own slang. But you go to a country like China, yeah, there's two main languages, but there's a whole bunch of other dialects that people wouldn't even be able to talk to one another because it's so different. We don't know how many are left to reach that, but we know it's getting close. There's so many. I'm on the email list for the American Bible Society, and they've said they got, you know, the Bible in so many different languages yet, but still they're still going further. You talk about other areas too, Iran, Pakistan, all these. Yes, there are common languages, but the dialects of the different areas, the different phrases, there's not a Bible, so they don't know what it is. So that's going to be one of the things that we kind of look for. Another reason, and we haven't talked about it yet, but it comes on down. I'll talk about it in just a minute. Verse 15 says, "When ye therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand." Now this goes through a little bit of time after the rapture's happened, approximately halfway through. Okay, there's going to be a peace treaty signed sometime that's going to start the clock ticking based on Daniel's timing. Daniel gave us approximately 7 years. There's going to be tribulation before the end comes. Halfway in the middle of that, there's going to be an abomination of desolation, and what they think that means is there's going to be, the new temple is going to be rebuilt in Israel, and they're going to be able to practice their religion up till that mid-time when Antichrist takes over fully and wants a one-world government. He's going to come in and he's going to make a sacrifice in the temple that's unholy, what would be considered unholy. Of course, he's being unholy and all these things, and the Jews are just going to go crazy, in my opinion. But they'll know that, okay, this guy that said he was our Savior is not our Savior. He's not who we... That's what a lot of people, and it's what I think, that this is the time period. When you see this happening, spoken of, you know you're in this day of the Lord. 16, "Then let them which be in Judea flee unto the mountains." Okay, if you're a Jew and you're in Jerusalem at that time, you better get out, because it's going to be... The Jews don't want to change. The one thing that they are good about, they're stubborn about their religion. The ones that are actually believers. And they believe the way they want to believe, as far as they think their Messiah has not come yet, but they're going to be coming, and this guy they thought was the Messiah is not now. Now he's going to try to seek them out and try to destroy them, because they're still looking for the Messiah. So they need to flee. "Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of the house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, but pray that ye flight not be in winter, neither on the Sabbath, for then shall there be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to come to this time, no, nor ever shall be." So after that abomination of desolation, there's going to be a time that is considered the Great Tribulation. Things that we're going through now is not going to be considered any way, shape, or form. We think we're being under tribulation now. It's going to be so much worse during that time. The prior time, the first 3.5 years, is going to be tribulation like they haven't seen. But up until this time, once the Antichrist takes over fully and he wants to do all that he wants, they're going to be going around and if rounding up, and that's when the mark's going to take place, and all these things are going to happen, and you're going to die if you don't take his mark. I'm saying you. Hopefully we're all gone in the rapture, so we won't have to face this. But the people that are left there, and like I said, I can't get into all of it. It brings up a lot of questions. I'm just trying to give you what I think you should know. Verse 22, and except these days be shortened, there should be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. It's talking about the days of the Lord. It could happen, it could keep on happening. The day of the Lord's getting ready. He's going to shorten it, so the time comes, then the time starts clicking. Now, we don't know exactly, after the rapture happens, when this peace treaty is going to be signed, and from the readings in the Word, after the peace treaty signed, that kind of starts the time clicking as to the final 7 years. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall rise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect. I think we're seeing a little bit of that now. Some of the people that, for a long time have believed and believed, they don't believe anymore. We don't know why, but they don't. Behold, I have told you before, wherefore, if they say unto you, Behold, he's in the desert, go not forth, behold, he's in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even to the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. This is talking at the end time, the final day of the Lord. Certain things are going to happen, okay, on that day. For whosoever the carcass is, there will be eels gathered together. It's just telling us when something dies, what's the first thing? How do you know that something has died? When we was out here mowing, I think I told at our Bible study, mowing and weed eating one day, and I was weed eating back on the back half of it towards the annex, and whoo, first thing I smelled that, ooh, I can smell that. And the next thing I saw, there's vermin all over it, just all over. That's what's going to happen. It's going to, at the end times, people are just going to start doing whatever they know to do. It's just going to be their human nature. Okay? The people that are without Christ. 28, for wheresoever the carcass is, there shall be the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation, 29, of those days, shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. This is talking about the very, very end time. The second returning of Christ. All this is going to happen. The sun's going to lose its light. When the sun loses its light, the moon will lose its light because it's just a reflection. Everything, when God spoke light into existence, it was from Him. Before there was light. It was God's light, His Shekinah, in my opinion. But He made it to where we could see, and it set the time and the seasons. You go back and read in Genesis, it sets the time and the seasons. Here, all this is going to be gone. We're going to be in darkness. It's going to be like the Egyptians when they went through that time of darkness. They're not going to know what to do. After all that happens, verse 30, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. Everybody on the earth, somehow, some way, are going to see Jesus coming back with all the saints that are with Him. He shall send His angels with a great sound of a trumpet. They shall together His elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So everybody's going to be behind Christ at that particular time. And that's the very end time when Christ comes back the second time. Verse 32 goes on. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise, ye, when ye see all these things, know it is near, even at the door. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. Now, when do we know that the Porter Peach Festival is going to happen? When they have peaches. When do they have peaches? It's usually in July when they start coming off. We know before that they're going to start budding, usually in March, maybe a little earlier. Sometimes they get bit by the weather, but we know that season. We know what's going to happen. The fig tree was very prominent over in Israel. Not so much prominent here, because we don't have too many, they don't grow very well here. But just say like the peach tree. We know when that's going to happen. It's going to happen in the spring and summers when it's going to happen. That's what Paul was telling the disciples there in Thessalonica. I don't have to tell you about the times and the seasons. You know when it's going to be about this time, about this season. But it also says later on, I haven't finished this, but as we go on through the rest of this, it says no man knows the day or the hour, not even Christ. Christ is the one speaking in that. And I don't finish that out, but you can go ahead and finish the rest, or there's several more verses. I'm not going on past this, but there's several more that's telling us, I don't even know the time that's going to happen, or the day that it's going to happen. But we can be cognizant that it's coming. And that's what this word is telling us today, and that's what I wanted to try to pass on to y'all, and I hope you enjoyed it, or hope you take it to heart. The time is growing short for each one of us, whether it's here on our earth, our own life, or the time of the earth itself. It's coming at us really quick. So we need to make sure, whatever we do, to be telling people about Christ. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out this morning. I'll just repeat. Let me go ahead and